Today, we're diving into the mind of an ancient Taoist philosopher, Zhuangzi. And let me tell you, he offers this really radical way to look at life's biggest challenges, stress, failure, even death, from a completely different angle. So let me start by asking you a question. Are our minds a cage? I mean, really think about that for a second. We spend our entire lives trying to cram our heads full of knowledge, chasing success, and looking for security. But what if those very things, our thoughts, our ambitions, our desires, are actually the bars of a prison we're building around ourselves? Zhuangzi nailed this problem over 2,000 years ago. He said, look, our lives are finite, they have an end, but knowledge, it's limitless. And this endless, frantic chase for more facts, more success, more certainty, it's not just tiring, it's the very thing that builds our mental cage piece by piece. So, that brings us right to our first section, understanding and hopefully escaping what Zhuangzi calls the human cage. He had this amazing way of seeing society as, well, kind of like a zoo, where all of us are trapped by our own desires and the rigid rules that everyone else follows. This really breaks it down. On one side, you have the path we're all told to follow. Pursue every bit of knowledge you can, but Zhuangzi says that's a fool's errand. We're told to strive for success and status, but he just reminds us, hey, success and failure? They're just temporary states. They come and go. We're constantly judging everything as good or bad, but he argues those labels are the actual root of all our stress and anxiety. Basically, the conventional path is the cage. Okay, so if we're living in a cage, then what does freedom even look like? Well, for Zhuangzi, the ideal, the goal, is to become what he called the zhenren, which we can translate as the true person or the realized person. And here is the Zenren. Now, it's really important to get this. This isn't a god or some kind of mythical superhero. This is a human being who has managed to get in sync with the natural flow of the universe, what Zhuangzi calls the Tao. They live in total harmony, way beyond the everyday fears and worries that trap the rest of us. So what does it actually feel like to be a true person? Well, these qualities come straight from Zhuangzi's texts. Imagine it. You sleep without dreams. You wake up without a single worry. You're not scared of heights or fire or water. You accept life and death as just natural. You don't beat yourself up over mistakes or get a big head from success. Your emotions are just calm and steady, like the seasons changing. It's a state of incredible peace. All right, that all sounds amazing, right? But how on earth does a normal person get there? How do you go from being trapped in that cage to becoming a true person? Well, Zhuangzi lays out a pretty wild path, and it all revolves around the art of forgetting. He calls this process zuwang, or sitting and forgetting. It's this deliberate process of stripping away your social conditioning, layer by layer. He tells this great story about a student, Yanhui, who keeps updating his teacher, Confucius, on his progress. First, he says, I've forgotten morality. Then he comes back and says, I've forgotten social rituals. And finally, he reaches the last step. He just sits and forgets everything, his body, his senses, his own mind, until he merges completely with the flow of the Tao. Now, along with that, there's another practice called shinzai, or fasting of the mind. And Zhuangzi uses this incredible metaphor for it. He says, imagine you're visiting a zoo. You can enter the cage of human society. You can observe all the animals, other people, chasing their desires, fighting their battles. But you remain a visitor. You're not an inmate. You just watch, without getting attached, without an agenda, and without getting sucked into all the drama. And, as you start down this path, your entire perception of reality just starts to warp and transform. And it starts with the biggest, most fundamental human fear of all, death. This slide really shows you just how radical that shift is. For most of us, right, death is a tragedy. It's a terrible loss. But for the true person, it's just a natural transformation, like the sun setting. We see getting sick as a horrible curse we have to fight. Zhuangzi sees it as the great smith, the creative force of the universe at work, melting us down and forging us into something totally new. We fight against change with everything we have. They just flow with it. This idea is captured perfectly in this wild parable about a man named Ziyu. A terrible illness is twisting his body into new shapes, and his friend asks him, "Don't you hate this?" Ziyu's response is just incredible. He doesn't see it as a curse at all. He sees it as this creative act of the universe, and he starts finding joyful, new purposes for his transformed body. Why in the world should he hate it? And this leads to one of his most mind-bending concepts, hide the world within the world. Zhuangzi explains it like this. If you hide your boat in a valley, a strong person can still come and carry it away. But if you hide the entire world inside the world itself, if you just stop trying to own and possess things and simply accept their place in the natural flow in the Tao, then nothing can ever be taken from you. Okay, so let's pull all these threads together in our final section. What does all of this really mean for how we can actually live a life of real peace and freedom? And here it is. This is the heart of it all. Zhuangzi's goal isn't to be cold and detached from life. It's to be in deep, profound harmony with it. There's this one story where a friend dies and his buddies are found singing and playing music next to his body. And it's not because they're disrespectful. It's because they have this profound acceptance that their friend is just returning to his natural state. They are flowing with the cycle, not fighting it with sadness. But, and this is a really big but, Zhuangzi is no naive idealist. He knows this stuff is incredibly difficult. Just when you think you've grasped this peaceful state of being, he throws a massive curveball. He tells the story of a man named Zisong, a really good, virtuous person who, despite all his goodness, is living in absolute, grinding poverty and is literally starving to death. His friend finds him singing this desperate, just heartbreaking song, trying to figure out who's to blame for his suffering. Was it his parents? Was it heaven? Was it humankind? He can't find the culprit, and this reveals a brutal truth. Sometimes suffering just happens for no reason. All he can finally conclude is, it must be fate. And that's where Zhuangzi leaves us, hanging. Is the way of the true person, this state of perfect, flowing harmony with the universe, something we can actually achieve? Or is it a beautiful, maybe even unattainable ideal that we can only strive for in a world that is, let's face it, often harsh, random, and completely unforgiving?